Hello YouTube, Sidekick here with another installment of the Iron Bomber's Guide to the DCS Galaxy. Today we're back with our second part of the series called Rolling Snakeyes on the Fine Art of High-Speed, Low-Level Bombing. Last time we talked about the techniques and the factors that could affect accuracy, and then we went out to the range and did some testing in the Harrier, which gave us the ability to see what was happening because we could see the HUD, and more importantly, we could see the CCIP cross. So we could tell exactly where the bombs were going to land. Today, we're going to review what we learned from that and try to apply it to a case where we don't have either a HUD or a CCIP pipper. So we'll figure out a plan, and then we'll go out in the A4 and see if we can manage not to suck at this without any of the computer bombing aids. So let's get started. Last time we figured out that in the level bombing approach, you basically decide ahead of time how high and how fast you'll fly. And based on those choices, you know what the bomb fall line should be. And so you pick a sight angle to look down. When the target crosses that sight angle, you pickle. We talked about how accuracy in a low-level high-speed drop is pretty sensitive to the following factors. First of all, your speed. Second, your altitude, and whether or not you're level. It's also pretty sensitive to when you press the pickle button, which isn't trivial when you're moving at that speed. In truth, I would say that I learned that it's probably harder to hit a point target this way than when you're dive bombing. Okay, well, because we used the Harrier, we're actually able to get some sight pictures to confirm what we're talking about. So let's look at what we learned. Here's the side picture for a nominal drop. You can see we're about 400 feet and 520 knots. And you can see that the CCIP pipper is about 8 degrees, actually maybe a little bit more than that. But let's go with 8 degrees, which, since there are 17.5 mils in a degree, would be 140. Okay, now here's the sight picture for a drop that was high. In this case, we are at 470 feet and 510 knots. And the CCIP cross is about 10 degrees, maybe a shade less than 10 degrees below the flight path vector, which would be something like 170, 175 mils. Finally, here's a picture of a much slower run. This time we were at about 400 feet, but only about 400 knots. And the CCIP pipper is again around 11 degrees. So something around 190. So now let's assume that the Snakeyes should behave more or less the same when we drop them from the A4. And let's assume that a good attack profile for the A4 is around 400 feet and 450 knots. That should give us a sight depression between the 140 and the 190, so let's split the difference and call it about 160. But there's another problem. If we look at the A4 sight, it only goes from minus 130 to plus 130. That means if we set the depression to more than 130 degrees, we won't have a reference on the sight that corresponds to the horizon line. And that's going to be a problem because we know that another big factor affecting accuracy is our ability to fly level. So we need a horizon line. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set the depression to minus 100 mils. Then my sight line for the drop should be at minus 60 mils. So when the target hits the 60 mil line, I can pickle. And my horizon line will be at plus 100 mils, so I'll want to put that on the horizon. Okay, so I think we have a setup that can work. Now the last thing that we need to do is to think about adjustments we're going to make as we're flying the approach, because chances are we're not going to be at exactly 400 feet and 450 knots. So let's take a look. When we flew a little high, 70 feet extra in altitude gave us about around 35 mils more. So that's fairly easy to calculate. That means for every 100 feet that we're high, we want to use about an extra 50 mils on the sight. And let's see, when we flew about 120 knots slower, then we added, well, about 50 mils. So let's say every 100 knots is also going to be 50 mils. So for every 100 feet up, we add 50 mils to the sight. And for every 100 mils slower, we add 50 mils to the sight. So we'll need to try and keep those numbers in mind as we're approaching the target and make some real-time adjustments. All right, well, let's go see if we can make this work. Okay, here we are in an A4 approaching the iron bombing test range. On the outside, if I showed you, you can see that we have 4 snake eyes on the center pylons and 2 each on the pylons 2 and 4. So we're just going to set it up here first. We're just going to drop single snake eyes off the center pylon. So we'll fence in that way. As you can see, I got the 100 mils on the sight as we discussed. See that the iron bombing range is just directly ahead of us there. So I think all we need to do is fly straight and level. We'll get ourselves lined up here a little bit. So the first run, we'll just go straight in. We won't bother with the trim run today, just to save some time. Right, so time to go down. To dive down, I'm going to put the target near the top of the windscreen, so we're well down below it. So if we get the low altitude warning, we should already be kind of pulling up. We'll try and get get that holded at the horizon at around 400 feet. We're a little bit high here. Just a little bit closer to 400, and there. 400 feet, 400 knots, and a little bit more than 150 mils. Let's see how we do. Okay, so we're a little bit short, but maybe we should expect that because we also were a little bit slow. We didn't take that into account, so we probably should have been a little bit more like 170 minutes. Well, that's how it goes. All right, so not bad. Still got inside the first ring, I think, there. So let's go around and give it another shot. So again, there's a lot to manage in those last few seconds. You got to keep an eye on what your altitude and speed actually are. You got to resist the temptation to fiddle with the altitude too much and just get level. Check what it is, and then do the mental math for when you're gonna release, and then the target goes by pretty quick. So yeah, this is not a simple exercise by any stretch of the imagination, but we get one decent drop. Let's see how we do in the next one. So we're just coming around again, going a little bit farther out to sea than we would on a dive bombing run. But we'll just keep looking over our left-hand shoulder here and try to get ourselves lined up. It's pretty much the same procedure. When we think we're in about the right place, we start to roll in, and then we just put the top of the canopy, the lift vector, on the target. The difference here is that we actually want to roll out with the flight path vector below the target, so we're diving down below it. Pull, 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 pull. Start the rollout. And the rollout is kind of slow because we really got to work at getting that alignment. It's a big problem too. But the other thing I'm doing in terms of managing the throttle is I'm basically pulling the throttle back to about 75% when I feel like I'm getting close to 450. And then when I level out, I'm trying to put a little bit of the throttle back in. But there's a little bit of real-time jockeying going on there too. So here we go again. How we doing? We're a little high. Just try and stay level, a little high. 400 knots, but a little high. So we're going to go a little longer. Stop. 400 knots, 500 feet, and this time we added about 50 mils. Let's see how we do it. Wow. Pretty hard to do any better than that. Okay, so our real-time adjustment seemed to work pretty well. So at that time we were around 400 knots, so we were a little bit slow. Guess maybe we should have added a bit more for that. Well, actually, we shouldn't. It worked out pretty well. So, 400 knots, 500 feet, and around 190 mils seemed to be a pretty good guess. All right, well, let's try it again. We got 2 more on the center pylon. Nice day here on the shore of the Persian Gulf. Okay, so once again, just coming around kind of on our base leg here. And just waiting until we're about lined up. All right, let's start rolling in there. I do tend to roll in a little late every time, I just don't come around the corner as fast as I think I'm going to. Pull, pull, pull. Trying to roll out with the pipper under the target. Top of the windscreen there, dive down, start to pull up, and at around 1,000 feet, I'm pulling up. All right, you want to hear that low altitude warning? There it is. Try to level off. How are we doing? Okay, good and fast this time. A little bit over 450 knots, but we're a little high, so we'll split the difference right there. 450, 550, and we're going at about 180, let's call it, mils, but we were off to the right. Let's see. All right, well, we were just about right for length, but we were off to the right. Okay, one more on the center line, see how we do. So, I can't say that I'm really comfortable yet with this. We're still managing to get some decent results, but getting everything lined up as well as keeping track of all the parameters and doing the mental math as the target comes at you at 450 knots. Yeah, that's enough to do for one person in the cockpit. All right, so one more time off the center pylons. See if we can do how we do with the last one. So far, we've got them all on the 50-meter target at least. Okay, one more roll in here. All right, pull it around. Just get it up on the top of the windscreen. Roll out. Lined up on it. Straight this time. Okay. Dive down. Start to pull up around 1,100 feet or so. Hear that low altitude warning before we go through the target. There it is. Hold it on the horizon. How are we doing? Around the right height. Around the right speed. There. Okay, 400, 450. Yeah, but we're more at 45 mils than 65, so we're probably going to be a little bit short. And we are. And as you can see, we actually didn't drop at 60 mils, it was more like 40, and in fact we dropped short. So, well, it landed where it should have. We just didn't pickle when we should. So, okay, you know what? That is enough of that. Trying to drop single bombs, single snake eyes, just is an awful lot of work. So we got 4 more bombs, 2 on each wing. So can't see it, but I'm setting up the cockpit. We're going to ripple all 4 off in one last throw here. So set up the same way, but this time we're going to drop all 4 bombs, see how we do. All right, so, well, you know, dropping snake eyes is proven to be quite a bit more difficult than I actually thought it was going to be. It's pretty hard to drop a single snake eye very accurate. I got some ideas about where they are a more appropriate choice, but suffice it to say that if I was going to be trying to take out a point target with a single bomb or even a couple bombs, I'm not sure that I would start by thinking I was going to use snake eyes. I think we have some other tricks in our arsenal, though, and I think maybe we'll, in the next video, we'll talk about maybe a way of actually doing low-level bombing with the bombing computer instead of using the Snakeyes. But that'll be for the next video. For now, let's see if we can get one more good drop. Drop all 4 bombs. So we're lined up, a little bit off to the right, but we're lined up. Get that pull up. Hear the tone. Get it up. How are we doing? Okay, get level. We're climbing. Get level. We're a little high. Speed is good, but we're a little high. So we're going to go a little long. Lined up on the middle. Keep the speed. Okay, altitude's coming back to 500, so right there. See how we do. Pretty good concentration, a little bit long, but I think we definitely would have covered the target that way. So, certainly one thing about Snakeyes is that they probably don't want to drop them just one at a time. I think they're designed to be dropped in clusters to make sure that you take out the target. And that's another thing that I think we'll do in a future video is take a look at using Snakeyes to attack a linear target, because I think that's where they really are an appropriate choice. But I would say that this video has convinced me that if I'm going to take out a single point target and I only have a bomb or 2 to do it, I don't think I'm going to choose to do that with Snakeyes. Now, you guys may get better results than I did. I'd be interested to hear how your own practices go. But for now, I think this is going to be Sidekick. Signing off.